So my name is Iain Gray. I'm here to tell you about how to think outside the box. Actually, I'm not really, right? I thought that would be really funny, though, that I was sitting listening to Stephen's presentation thinking, oh my God, what if he says something and I'm going to, he said, this is brain dead, and I'm going to talk about it. So I was kind of sitting on the edge of my seat saying, please don't say community innovation is the worst idea ever. But actually, I think there's a pretty good segue between the two. You can probably tell from my accent that I think this is mainly a North Carolina audience, right? So you can probably tell my accent is from Cary, North Carolina. Thank you, local boy. It's great to have a local audience. So yeah, I work for Red Hat, and I manage our services organization, and I'm going to talk about community-driven innovation, and I think it actually builds pretty well on what you've just heard. So this is the theme for the conference, as we've heard. And when Claire Juliet sent the theme to me, it made me think about, so what are the things that are actually scarce? What are the resources that are scarce for me as a manager, for us as managers? And I think it really boiled down to these three things, right? It's the dollars that we work with every day within our organizations, it's the time that we have to innovate, and it's the talent available within our, within our firewalls, within our organization. And this, I think, I would sum up as the traditional management challenge. When I became a manager many years ago back in the UK, this is what my first manager said to me. He said, Iain, I want you to do three things: manage time, money, and people. That's it. If you do it well, you're doing a great job, right? And I think that's the classic way that we've defined the role of a manager within an organization. But I think we're also now working in an environment where there's a huge amount of abundance in the environment around us, right? There is abundance in terms of the creativity out there. The tools that really drive that creativity are much more in abundance. Technology has really helped us tap into creativity. Knowledge and areas of specialism, we find deep expertise in all areas around us, and the degree of connectedness. So there's all these pools of abundance that help to balance that scarcity. And I think that really defines what has become the new management challenge, right? Which is, how do we, as innovators within our organization, or managers responsible for innovation, how do we tap into the abundance that might be outside our organization to help supplement that scarcity, or to help overcome that traditional scarcity model? So I think that's the new challenge that we face. And the guy who actually said it much more succinctly than I did, but I think this is the phrase that actually captures it, from Bill Joy, who is the founder of my former employer, actually, Sun Microsystems, when he said, there are always more smart people outside your company than within, right? And I think that really kind of captures the promise of community innovation, if you like. How can we actually tap into the talent that we're never going to be able to hire? We're never going to have the geographic reach to tap into all of the talent that's out there. So I think that is the promise of community-driven innovation. So this is kind of my agenda slide. Over the next 40 minutes or so, I want to cover these three areas. I want to start actually by talking about how at Red Hat we leverage a community innovation model. Everything we do at Red Hat is based around communities. It's open source communities because we're a software company. And I want to talk to you a bit about the communities within which we work. Then I want to kind of open the aperture a bit more and look at how are other companies using community-driven innovation. Some of the examples we have from Stephen's talk we have in common, but there's some great examples that we can look at outside of open source software. And then a topic that I really won't do justice to in this talk, but I just wanted to leave you with some thoughts around what are the types of things that you need to think of. What does it mean for your organization in terms of how do you tap into the community and help that drive innovation? So that's what I want to cover. So a bit about Red Hat. So this is the obligatory first slide on who we are as a company. I assume, how many people here know about Red Hat and our business model? Okay, good. So fortunately, I don't have 10 slides about the company background. But we are, we're the #1 leader in open source software. The company was established in '93. We've grown rapidly. We're now just over 4,500 people in the organization, spread over 33 countries in all parts of the world. We're very, very excited right now that we're moving our headquarters from NC State campus, which we've actually loved. We've loved being in NC State, but I think if you ask anybody who works for Red Hat and Raleigh, everybody's very excited about coming to the heart of downtown Raleigh, and we should be there. I think the first wave of people are due here in the June-July timeframe, so it's imminent. And I think we've got projections that we'll have 1,000 people based here in downtown Raleigh over the next 3 or 4 years. So we're very excited about that move. As you can see, we've grown the company both through organically and through acquisition. Our business, as many of you know, is we provide infrastructure software that our large customers depend on. So it's the backroom software upon which mission-critical applications depend, right? So our customers tend to be those people who need to process large amounts of data, do it quickly, do it cheaply. They care a lot about price performance, and they have large mission-critical applications. That's our kind of sweet spot. So the Wall Street institutions are a typical customer. Every transaction processed by the New York Stock Exchange runs on our software. The Federal Aviation Authority track all the planes in the US using our software. Amazon.com, both their retail site and their cloud offerings run on Red Hat. The animation studios, Disney, Pixar, DreamWorks, all use Red Hat. So it's that large kind of mission-critical type of customer that we're here to serve. And there's really kind of 2 differentiators about Red Hat as a company. The first thing is how we develop our software within open source communities. And the second part is then how we deliver that to our customers through a subscription model. And I just wanted to touch on those a bit. But here's the summary. So if I go to parties or I find people who aren't familiar with Red Hat, this is my kind of elevator pitch. Red Hat is a company that's built a $1 billion business selling free stuff, right? And I remember when I moved into my neighborhood in Cary, I said that to a neighbor of mine. I said, yeah, I work for Red Hat. We sell free stuff. And he's like, wow, you guys must be marketing geniuses. And I thought, okay, I'll let that slide. But then every time I saw him in the neighborhood, he's like, there's the guy who works for the marketing geniuses. And I thought, he actually thinks we're pulling the wool over people's eyes, right? We're kind of like, this is free, but why don't you buy it? So I said, look, why don't you come into Red Hat and actually meet the people and actually find out what we do every day? So he took me up on my offer, and I kind of educated him on what it means to build a $1 billion company on the back of free open source software. And this is hopefully you can see that slide, but this is a kind of summary slide around, so how do we build our products? I said there were kind of 2 differentiators about Red Hat. The first one is how we build our product. And this attempts to summarize that. So you see at the top of this slide, there are literally over 100,000 open source projects out there in the world today. So these are open source projects where people either individually or while they're working for commercial organizations, they freely contribute their code and the fruits of their development efforts back into a project. And these projects aggregate around communities, right? And at Red Hat, we add our expertise, we add our funding and our guidance to a few of those communities. So for example, the Fedora community is made up of a number of open source projects, and Fedora actually is the basis of our Red Hat Enterprise Linux product, right? It's the upstream community for our Linux product. ultimately then, so we have over 1,500 software engineers within Red Hat. We are contributing everything we do into those communities. So every day, the work of those 1,500 engineers is being given back into the community for the benefit of everybody. Similarly, with everybody else who's working in that community. We're all donating our IP, if you like, to a common pool. We also introduce our partners, be it our hardware partners or software partners, into the community, so they're also contributing their work into that same community. And then what we do as a company is we take the output of that community and we create commercial products, right? We create enterprise products, mission-critical products that our customers can rely on. So the benefit here, the benefit for the customer is they get to tap into a rapid innovation, the rapid innovation that comes with the community model, right? They get to access an extended, the fruits of an extended development team, and they get to do it in a very transparent way. Anybody on any day can go, can join these communities and see exactly what products are being developed and exactly the direction that the product is taking. So it's a very different model from the normal proprietary software model that we're used to seeing out there, where a company like Apple or a company like Microsoft, might on one day they'll have a launch date for their new operating system. They'll pull the wrappers off it, and we get to see what's in there. Through the work of this community, our customers and our partners can actually see the product as it's developing every single day, and they can influence the direction of that product. Right. So there's a large benefit for our customers. It also, the community model is proven. There's many studies have shown that this actually leads to higher quality code. So the number of defects in the number of lines of code is actually substantially lower when software is developed within a community. So there are many advantages for the customers. There's an obvious advantage for the community because we're all sharing the innovation. And the advantage for Red Hat, of course, is that we built a company by taking the output of those communities and building commercial products. So that's how we develop products. And the second part is how we go to market with our products, right? How we sell. And again, in a traditional software company, you sell a license to a product. So there's a one-time event where you go to your customer and your most aggressive salespeople convince that customer to buy the latest release of your expensive product, right? Well, at Red Hat, we don't actually sell products. We sell subscriptions. So we sell an annual ongoing subscriptions. And as part of that subscription, this slide captures some of the elements of the subscription, actually what you're buying. So you're buying the mission-critical support. You're buying the security response, the update, the patches, the compatibility with hardware and software, and so on. You're buying all the things, as a company, you're buying all the things that you expect if you're going to run your business on it, right? So if you're the New York Stock Exchange or Amazon.com, and your business relies, having your back-end servers running 24/7, these are all the things that you absolutely need in order to trust your business to the software. So that's what we sell that's how we sell our products. The interesting thing about the subscription, though, is not the list of features. It's actually how it changes the relationship between Red Hat as a company and our customers. Because like any subscription, the customer has the opportunity to renew it or not on an annual basis, right? So on an annual basis, the customer gets to choose, did Red Hat deliver enough value for us in the previous year? And if not, they don't need to renew the subscription. So it's, in that respect, it's a bit like your gym membership or your Wall Street Journal or whatever type of subscription you have. At the end of the year, you think back and say, well, if you're like me, I only went to the gym 3 times this year. I'm not going to renew my subscription. The twist with open source software is the bits are free, right? So remember I said before, we sell free stuff. The underlying code is free and it's free to use. So the difference at Red Hat is if our customers decide that they don't want to renew the subscription, they can still happily use our products, right? Because it's licensed under an open source model. So it really keeps us honest as a supplier to our customers, because not only do our customers have the opportunity every year not to renew, but they can actually still use our products if they choose not to renew. Now, they don't get the mission-critical support, and they don't get the latest updates and so on, but they can still use the code that's running on their, on their computers. So what it challenges us to do at Red Hat is to think every year about how much value are we delivering to our customers, and is there enough value that they're going to keep coming back to us. And we think that's fundamentally changed the relationship between Red Hat and our customers, and it's changed the kind of conversation. It's no longer about having to arm twist your customer for another $1 million for the latest revision of your product. All our product revisions are essentially free as part of the subscription. It's about how much have we done for our customers lately. Okay, so enough about Red Hat directly. So I wanted to talk about innovation within the community, and I want to focus in particular as an example on the Fedora community, which we work. So if you remember, I said earlier, Fedora is the community that we contribute our efforts to, and it ultimately becomes what we call Red Hat Enterprise Linux. And as I mentioned before, our customers work in the Fedora community with us. They can see how our product is developing. And there was a study done. This is actually a 2008 study, so it's a few years out of date now. But it's a study done by the Linux Foundation that calculated if we were to reproduce the Fedora community in a traditional software development way, back in 2008, the Fedora community, the efforts were worth just under $11 billion, right? So if you think of the theme of the conference today, doing more with less, there's no way that we in Red Hat, a relatively small company, could ever generate the amount of software development activity that we are, that we are seeing in the Fedora community, that we're leveraging within the Fedora community. So it's been a very powerful innovation model for us, to work within the community. The other interesting thing about it, and I think this talks a bit to Stephen's point earlier about diversity. So clearly, we're talking about the development of a software product here. There are many software developers that are part of the Fedora community, but the interesting part is there's a huge amount of diversity within the Fedora community. So this is a screen capture from the Fedora community page, and you can see as well as software developers, there are marketing people, designers, documentation writers, translators, support people, testers, usability study engineers, and so on, who are all freely contributing their time, their energy, their IP back to the community. And that's where we get the diversity within the Fedora community, because there's actually a whole different set of skill sets that are actually contributing to create that community, including lawyers and licensing experts. I thought this was an interesting example of just how the Fedora community works. So this is if you can see this at the back, this is a screenshot from the fedoraforum.org. So this is the support site for the Fedora software product. So if you're using Fedora and you need technical support, you can go to this site. And a couple of things kind of stand out here, right? There's a quote here. It's called Linus's Law from Linus Torvalds, who was the original inventor of Linux. And he is attributed with this quote, says, given enough eyeballs, all bugs are shallow. And what that means is, if you have enough people looking at your code base, the bugs are going to be easy to find, right? All bugs are easy to resolve if you just have enough people that are actually looking at that code day to day. And this really talks to the point I made earlier about software developed in a community model being higher quality, because you have the whole community working with it on a daily basis. And if you look at some of the numbers here, I kind of thought this was fascinating the first time I saw it. This is the support site, and you'll see there's 134,000 members of the technical support community around Fedora. There's 1.5 million posts, questions and answers have been given on this particular forum. And the top poster, and of course this can change on a daily basis, but the top poster is somebody called Lee123 Linux, right? No idea who that is. I actually Googled him when I saw this, and on the web I could find out his musical taste, his or her musical taste, but I couldn't find out where they were from. I know they're not a Red Hat employee, that's for sure. But you can see that they've posted over 20,000 times, right? So this is somebody who's working in the community and has helped over 20,000 people solve their problem. So again, it gives an indication of the amount of leverage and how the community together we can all do more. This person dedicating a lot of their time to the Fedora support community. Okay, so hopefully that overview of Fedora gave you an idea of how we work within the community to develop software products. A couple of years ago, we actually did a sort of different twist on the community innovation model where we started working with some of our customers within community. So we saw, we had conversations with customers where they came to us with particular problems they had. And rather than taking the traditional approach and saying, okay, so let's sit down and talk about how we can solve your problem, and by the way, we'll ask you somewhere in that conversation to write us a huge check, we said, well, why don't we take your problem to the community, right, and actually see if we can solve it better within the community. So there was an example, we worked with the US Navy 2 or 3 years ago. If you know anything about naval ships, they're essentially big floating data centers, right? And the Navy had this problem where the systems in the ships really broke into two categories. There were the real-time, command and control type systems used for, radar guidance, weaponry, and so on. And then there were the more mundane back-end data center systems that you would see in any office, right? Things that run email, databases, inventory, supply chain, and so on. So the Navy historically had been managing those two types of systems very separately. And it was very costly for them to maintain software platforms for real-time systems and then their commercial systems in two separate ways. So they came to us and they said, hey, we want to standardize on a commercial off-the-shelf platform for all our software, whether it's guidance systems or whether it's ERP systems. But it needs to have real-time characteristics, right? So we took this to the community and we said, okay, why don't we form a project within the Fedora community to develop real-time extensions to Linux? And we worked along with IBM and with Raytheon to sponsor that project, and that's what we developed, right? Now, if you look at the advantage of this for the Navy when we delivered that, when the community delivered that, first of all, it solved their ultimate problem, right? They were able to lower their costs significantly by consolidating onto that standard platform. But I think more importantly, it allowed them to tap into expertise that they would never have been able to, right? We as a single company would never have been able to provide them that expertise, nor could any one other single company. So it allowed them to tap into a lot more expertise than they otherwise would have got. It also essentially future-proofed their solution because the IP wasn't owned by one single company, and it actually wasn't owned by them either. It was owned within the community, right? So the skills around their particular solution is distributed around the community. So they weren't locked into one vendor for future upgrades, which was a big benefit to them. It was a huge benefit to the community as a whole because now, with the sponsorship of those companies, the community as a whole benefits from these real-time extensions. So the community can take the output of those projects and go do other things with them, right? So go repurpose that IP. And it was good for Red Hat because we commercialized the output of that and we took it to other customers. So it truly was a sort of win-win-win across the three main stakeholders, and a good example of customers working within the community model. We also we saw a kind of different twist on that same problem with JP Morgan. JP Morgan came to us because they had a different problem. They had innovation that was developed inside their business that they wanted to take outside. So they had developed not to go into the technicalities, but it was a piece of messaging software that they didn't want to maintain anymore. It was just too expensive to keep upgrading and keeping this current. So we said, okay, well, why don't we form a community around it and actually donate the code, the IP to the community, and further develop it within a community. And that's what we did. And the product is still it's still vibrant, it's still active, it's still being actively upgraded and maintained now within a community. So JP Morgan still trusts their business to the software, but they don't have the overhead of actually having to pay and maintain the software on a daily basis. The community, again, similar to the US Navy example, the community benefited from this huge injection of IP that JP Morgan donated to the community, right? The interesting thing about these two examples that I just learned recently is the JP Morgan is now using the real-time extensions that the Navy developed, and the Navy is now using this messaging platform that JP Morgan originally developed. So it turns out that it's actually also a good example of cross-pollination within communities and the additional benefits that come from working within a community. So finally on this section, so because we've helped customers in this area, and we build all of our products within a community, we're now seeing that organizations are coming to us, to Red Hat, and asking us to help them define what their kind of open source innovation model should be. Right? So we've developed a practice around this within my organization, and what we hear is companies are coming to us saying, help us define an open source strategy and governance model. When we look a bit deeper into that, it really falls into these three areas. Companies are asking us to help them figure out how do we consume open source in a controlled and manageable way. Secondly, there are companies who want our help to help them determine how do we collaborate within communities, or how do we take some of the techniques that are really working well within open source communities and bring them into our organization. And then finally, there are a few companies that are asking for our help in how do we create communities, right? We are working with a transportation company who wants to build a community of their competitors, essentially, to work on the non-differentiated parts of their business. So we're helping them form a community and answer some of the questions about how you do that. So it's definitely a growing area for us. So that's a bit about community innovation, what it means to Red Hat, how Red Hat has managed to do more by working within the community, and how we develop our products. As I said, I wanted to open the aperture a bit wider outside of software and outside of open source, and take a look at, so who else is working within a community? Who else is using the community innovation model within their business? And this is a model that, in order to act as a kind of framework for this is a model that I worked on with one of the guys in our marketing organization to look at the different ways that we see companies using community innovation models. And we're trying to draw a slight relationship here between the community innovation model and Maslow's needs pyramid, right? I'm sure everybody here knows about Maslow's needs pyramid, where the higher you get up the pyramid, the more kind of self-actualized you become. And what we realized when we looked at different companies who were leveraging communities to drive their innovation is we saw that same kind of evolution, where people started off with a very traditional view of fueling innovation within their organization, and then increasingly took steps towards a kind of higher view of that. So I wanted to briefly go through these 4 levels and show you some examples of how people are innovating at each level within communities. So the interesting thing about this pyramid, again, kind of just like Maslow's pyramid, the higher you go up in that stack, the more community participation actually increases, right? So the more of your innovation or your IP is actually being developed within a community. What comes with that is the less control you have of that innovation process. The more you're actually, rather than specifying how innovation is going to happen and guiding the innovation, the higher you go up in that pyramid, the more you're actually an influencer of the innovation process. And I'll give some examples of that later. Similarly, when you go up that pyramid, the more you really need to answer the question, what's in it for me, right? And there's 2 main stakeholders here when you ask that question. One is, what's in it for you as a community participant, as a company? Why do you want to work within the community? What is it that you expect to get out of it? You need to be very clear on that. And then secondly, what's in it for the community, right? What will be gained by the community participants? And if you don't have clear answers to those questions, it's going to be a tough road. So that's typically the starting point for anything around community innovation. So at the first level, I'm going to pick on my former employer, but the first level here is essentially where we take a very traditional mode to innovation, where innovation is essentially being driven within your company. It's inside-driven innovation. And what you see a lot of here is that in order to fuel and help that inside innovation, companies reach out to their customers and listen to their customers, and find out what is it they want, what is it they think of their existing products. So you see, the tools that are used to drive innovation at this kind of base level are the very traditional ones like customer surveys, customer focus groups, market research, and the example I'm going to pick on, the customer advisory board, right? Every company I've worked for has always had a customer advisory board. And this is why I call the customer advisory board, it's where customers are paying for influence, because typically you invite the customers who pay you the most to come and be part of your customer advisory board. And you lay out to them, here are our product plans, here's our strategy plans, here's where we're thinking of expanding. And your customers, after you've taken them for a round of golf and drinks the night before, your customers give you the benefit of their insight and their wisdom, and you listen to them, or you pretend to listen to them, and you leave with this kind of albatross around your neck, because you're like, oh my God, we got to come back here in 6 months' time and pretend we actually did something with their input, right? So the CAB, it can be a good way of it's a great way of making your best customers feel like you're listening to them, but it has, some pretty significant shortcomings, right? It's inherently, it's not particularly scalable. I mean, as your market becomes more diverse, as your customers become more segmented, it's really hard, to keep the CAB structured well. It does rely on the kind of premise that the customers who pay you the most are going to have the most insights about your business, which I think is a sort of fundamentally flawed premise. And it really kind of, it's subject to the kind of classic innovator's dilemma, if you guys are familiar with that, where your existing customers are very good at suggesting sustaining innovations, how to make your existing products that bit better for them. They're a very poor source of disruptive innovation and taking you into new markets. In fact, the innovator's dilemma will tell you that your existing customers are in no way incented to suggest disruptive innovations to you, because by definition, that's going to divert your funds, your time, and energy away from the things that they care about, right? So they want to see your sustaining innovations, not your disruptive ones. So the cab and some of the traditional ways of listening to your customers have, they have these inherent flaws that we need to be aware of if we're using them to fuel innovation. Which kind of takes us to the next level where we're listening to the community rather than just our customers. Stephen talked about or touched upon some examples in this of this level. So here again, if you look at how the innovation process is actually being managed, it's still being managed within your organization. You still have really total control over the product direction that you take. It's just that you're now doing it in a much more transparent manner, right? You're reaching out to your community of customers, your community of potential customers, and you're seeking their input on, what direction should I take, what new products should we develop, and so on. So it's definitely a step further up that pyramid, right? You're leveraging a community, you're listening to a broader base. It's essentially a kind of long tail version of the customer advisory board. You're now tapping into a much more extended set of participants. And it really, I think the companies, no surprise here, right? The companies who do best with this model are those that have strong brands. Because, this will work if you have a brand that's strong enough to actually attract a community around your organization. It's tough to do if you don't have that strong brand. But there's some great examples out there. So we mentioned, Dell with IdeaStorm earlier. Dell have a great site, actually. You can see some of the stats that they put on the site. Huge number of ideas generated from their community. A lot of good things that they've implemented. Starbucks, I revisited this site recently, and they've done a lot of enhancements on this site. They're not only driving new product developments, but they also have an area where they're soliciting input on the Starbucks experience, and also how customers think Starbucks should contribute back to their local community. So Starbucks are doing a good job at. It's a great marketing tool, as well as being a great way of getting ideas from their customers. And then, Lego is a well-written example. There've been lots of case studies on this. Interestingly, though, I just found out that Lego are actually closing this down. So I think they've realized that it's a great way to listen to customers. It's not particularly a great business model for them to be in. I guess they found that just not a scalable business model. Which points to one of the downsides with this particular way of driving innovation is you need to be able to answer the question, what's in it for the community, as we spoke about earlier. And in a lot of cases, it comes down to kind of recognition and the sort of implicit rewards of seeing your idea being taken further by the sponsoring company. But you also need to figure out, so what are you going to do with the bad ideas that you don't want to pursue or might conflict with your business model? So Dell, for example, this is going back a few years, but Dell got into some trouble with communities a few years ago because they actually tried to kind of subtly on their website push off some of the top ideas that really conflicted with their business model, right? So the number one idea when this site was launched was remove adware from every Dell PC, right? And if you know, adware is that really annoying software snippets that you get on every new Windows-based PC. Don't get it with Linux, by the way, but but if you buy a Windows-based PC, you get this, you get adware. So the number one idea, and thousands of people contributed this saying, get rid of this, right? And of course, that fundamentally conflicts with Dell's business model. I have 5 minutes left. Wow, okay. I will overrun, but that will go faster. It conflicts with the business model. So you need to figure out, how are you going to how are you going to deal with those issues? Because you're now innovating within a transparent community. I obviously talk slower when I'm up on stage. Yeah, this worked perfectly when I was rehearsing it. Okay, so moving swiftly along to the third level. This is, so at the third level, now innovation is actually happening outside your organization. So now you're innovating within a community, right? So the IP is being developed no longer by your employees. And but fundamentally, you still own the innovation, and you still determine how that innovation is going to be applied within your company. And many companies are around that are using this, and I've kind of split them here into two groups. And as I found out last night, Spigot is actually one of the sponsors of the conference today. So I'm glad I inadvertently chose them as an example here. But on the left-hand side here, you see there are a lot of companies who are building a business by providing collaboration platforms that connect problem seekers with problem solvers, right? So Spigot, at least started by being the collaboration platform, within your organization to help you reach and tap into innovation across your broader organization, not just the typical people who are driving innovation within your company. Idea Crossing do a similar thing, but for the academic institutions. So they maintain relationships with some of the best universities around the world, and they allow you to set problems that you can have MBA students or PhD students or whatever, tackle your particular issues. And Innocentive, again, there's been a lot written about Innocentive. It's a spin-off from Eli Lilly, but they have a really rich collaboration platform that solves some very, very detailed, specific problems and attracts a lot of deep experts from different fields to work on very specific problems that their problem seekers post on that site. And all of these companies also help you manage the resultant IP so that it fits in with your governance model, and you actually own the output of that problem-solving activity. On the right-hand side, a couple of examples of companies who I've kind of cut out the middleman, if you like, and they're reaching out to their own communities to drive their innovation. So GE Plastics, a few years ago, they gave their customers tools to help their customers design new polymer resins that GE then commercialized. So it was great for the customer because they got the resin they wanted. They designed. It was great for GE because they were tapping into a whole lot of expertise. And this is Quirky is an example that I found earlier this week. It's my new favorite example, and I wish I had more time to talk about it. But what I will say is, go to the Quirky's website if you haven't seen this. They develop in a community-driven way, mainly kind of household products. And I thought the thing I really liked about it was not only how they're developing it, but how they answered the question, what's in it for me, right? Because this, if you can see it, so I bought this product from them, and it arrived on Wednesday, and it's this, it doesn't really matter what it is, but it's a charging stand for iPads and iPods, right? A very geeky thing to have. But this is a picture I took of the back of the packaging, and the thing I liked about it was they actually highlight, so this is the community member who invented this product. And as you see here, it said that the idea was refined by 620 other influencers. And they actually share 30% of the profits of those products with those influencers. So check it out. It's an interesting example. All right, so level 4 here. This is the top of the pyramid, and this is where you're actually working within a community completely to drive your innovation process. So level 3, as I mentioned before, the IP is owned by the sponsoring company, right? So yes, you are leveraging communities to drive IP, but fundamentally, you still own that IP. It's still yours. You own the innovation. The big difference in level 4 And there's definitely fewer examples of companies that are doing this. As I mentioned earlier when I was describing Red Hat, is you're actually developing your innovation within a community. And the fruits of that innovation is shared by every single member of the community. So you have much less control over how it's applied. And by definition, your business model about how you use that innovation is going to be very different if the innovation is shared with everybody. So Red Hat is an example of a company. We built our business on the back of that. Facebook are doing a really interesting thing around the open compute platform where they've decided that how they design their data centers isn't something that is a competitive differentiator for them. So they formed a community of hardware engineers, software engineers, and designers to help them create their data center environment, and they're sharing that IP across all the participants. Very different to Google's approach, where Google keeps its data center design locked up, and they see it as a true competitive differentiator. So Facebook's betting that if they give it out to the community, they'll actually make faster progress this way. So it's going to be really interesting to see. And I know a lot of traditional hardware manufacturers are really worried about this model. And I will wrap up soon. Okay. I will skip this slide on big data. Ask me later about big data. So just very quickly on this third part, I said I was just going to skip over this briefly about what it means to you. But I think in terms of the questions that are worth asking, if listening to the community, if you look at that level 2, and you see, okay, what are the things that, if this is something that you're interested in pursuing, these are some of the important questions. Is there a community out there that you can tap into? Is there a collaboration platform that exists, right? Is it Facebook? Is it Twitter? Or do you have to create your own collaboration website? As I mentioned before, do you have the brand power to attract the community to your site? And what is it that you're going to offer them? And how do you change your organization to actually be receptive to ideas that are coming in from the outside? That is an important part of all of these, all of the changes from an inside-driven to an outside-driven mode of innovation. Secondly, if you think of that level 3, if you're actually going to tap into experts that live outside your organization to fuel innovation, here are some of the important questions, right? So where do you find the skills and experience? Where are those experts that you need? Can you modularize your problem? And this exactly maps to what Stephen was saying earlier about can you actually frame the problem correctly? And if you overframe it or if you overspecify it, how much does it limit the potential of innovation? That's the same issue we were talking about earlier. And again, how do you deal with that governance process about IP that's been developed outside? And then finally, if you're actually talking about leveraging a community, developing all of your innovation within the community, similar questions, right? So what's your motivation for doing that? How are you going to motivate the community? Do you need to form communities, or do they exist already? What role are you going to take within that community? Again, what are the organization changes that you need to implement within your organization to make sure that you can actually build a business model around that mode of innovation? You'll be glad to know that is my final slide. So just in conclusion, I mentioned Red Hat as a kind of top of the pyramid example. It's worked very well for us in terms of building our business. More importantly than that, I think it's a model that's worked incredibly well for our customers, and we think we've changed the nature of the customer relationship in the software industry. But that top of the pyramid isn't for everybody, right? Not as a first step. But I think there's many ways, and hopefully I've given you some flavor of that. There's many ways that you can work with the community to help drive your innovation process, beyond just the standard ways. I think the two key questions are, think about the motivations, both for your company of doing it and both for the community members that you want to attract. and think about how your organization is, how receptive your organization is going to be to that, because you need to get over the not invented here associated with outside innovation. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and I'm glad to be here today. Thank you.